It should have been the easiest thing for the President of the United States to release all the information, every single file, on behalf of these American women.
You know, it seems as though Donald Trump had a very close personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and that he had personally spent time with victims in the Epstein operation. And I think that this is just, I mean, it's horrifying. It's horrifying.
The situation has become so fractured that even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Marjorie Taylor Greene have found themselves on the same side of this issue. When political opposites align like this, it's a signal that something significant is happening beneath the surface.
These American women aren't rich, powerful elites. They do not have someone paying for their airline tickets or paying for their trips or paying for their expenses every time they try to do something to get this information out. These are your average Americans. And you want to know what the Epstein files represent? The cover-up represents to average Americans. It represents the failures of the federal government and Congress to the American people.
In the waning days of her congressional tenure, Marjorie Taylor Greene sat down with a New York Times journalist for what would become her most revealing interview yet. What makes this conversation particularly significant is the relationship between Greene and this reporter, a connection that stretches back to 2021, shortly after her initial election to Congress. Their first conversation was conducted entirely off the record, and over the years, they maintained ongoing dialogue that would ultimately culminate in this explosive exit interview. The centerpiece of Greene's departure revolves around her involvement in pushing for the release of Jeffrey Epstein's files. Working alongside Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, Greene aligned herself with trafficking survivors who've been demanding transparency about the contents of these sealed documents. This bipartisan coalition, which included Democrats who'd been advocating for the same disclosure, represented an unusual political alliance. But it was Greene's phone conversation with Trump about this effort that became the breaking point. According to sources who were present during that speakerphone call, Trump made his position unmistakably clear. The files couldn't be released because doing so would damage his friends. The implication was obvious. Trump was prioritizing the protection of his inner circle, and likely himself, over the demands for accountability from survivors. But the Epstein files weren't the only catalyst for Greene's decision. Another moment that shattered her faith in Trump occurred during a memorial service for Charlie Kirk. When Charlie's sister Erica took the stage and publicly announced her decision to forgive her brother's killer, Trump followed with a starkly different message. He declared that forgiveness was impossible for him, that he harbored hatred in his heart, and that he would hate the perpetrator forever. For Greene, who views her Christian faith as central to her identity, this moment exposed something fundamental about Trump's character. The New York Times piece notes that Greene cited this as evidence that Trump's faith claims were hollow. What's particularly striking is how long it took Greene to reach this conclusion. Trump's character has been on full display since that infamous escalator ride in 2015, when he launched his campaign with inflammatory rhetoric targeting Mexican immigrants. Yet Greene, like so many others in the MAGA movement, chose to see what she wanted to see. According to the interview, she now admits to being naive, acknowledging that she genuinely believed Trump cared about working-class Americans. She's watching him dismiss concerns about affordability as a hoax and fail to deliver on promises to American workers. The interview makes clear that Greene hasn't undergone a complete ideological transformation. She maintains most of her conservative policy positions. However, she's become increasingly critical of Republican healthcare strategy, or the lack thereof. She's frustrated that there's no coherent plan being presented to the American people, that lawmakers are being asked to review proposals in classified settings, and that the party seems to be operating without consensus or direction. Hit subscribe to the Mac Media and help us build a community of 50,000 strong, people who won't settle for surface-level coverage. We're breaking down the stories that matter, and we need you with us.
Practically, I yelled at Mike Johnson last week on our GOP conference call. By the way, I'm missing the call today. It's going on right now. And I hope that Mike Johnson is finally giving a single health care policy because the country deserves it, and it shouldn't be a secret. And I shouldn't have to go into a skiff to go find our Republican health insurance plan.
Maybe
Honestly,
there is no plan.
You know what? You want to know something? That, I believe, is the truth. There's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of bills, but there's no consensus.
Yeah.
And I think that's a failure. I do.
Well,
I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
So she dropped out. And then they talk about how brave she is. No, brave would be to stay. And, it's one of those things. But she dropped out. I can't believe it that people can change so much. But you can't go from being a strong conservative to a stone cold liberal unless you are lying. You can't do that. I mean, you can stop liking somebody, or you can say, I don't know, she's fake. Look, front row Joe, what are you doing in the second row? What happened? Well, you're in the front row. That's front row Joe. I don't know who's been there, the front row Joes or you. It's pretty close, I think. Very different. Hey, very different types. Would you stand up, please, in the front row? Just stand up. Look at these women. Look.
Perhaps the most unexpected revelation from Greene's interview is her admission that she stopped watching Fox News. Her reasoning? She no longer considers it a factually accurate news source. This statement from a sitting Republican congresswoman represents a rare public acknowledgement of what media critics have been documenting for years. Fox News, under Rupert Murdoch's leadership, has faced legitimate questions about its commitment to factual reporting versus political narrative construction. The network has been criticized for presenting information that reinforces a particular worldview, rather than challenging its audience with comprehensive journalism. Greene's willingness to state this publicly marks a significant departure from Republican orthodoxy. The White House's response to the New York Times article is equally telling. Trump issued a statement asserting that he remains the leader of MAGA, an interesting defensive posture given that the article wasn't actually questioning his leadership. The piece was focused on Greene's personal journey away from the movement, not on identifying Trump's successor. This unprompted declaration suggests an awareness within Trump's circle that his grip on the movement is weakening. When you feel compelled to assert authority that isn't being directly challenged, it often indicates underlying insecurity about that very authority. Greene herself is now framing her political identity around America First rather than MAGA, a deliberate rebranding that signals her intention to establish something separate from Trump's movement. She's not leaving politics. She's attempting to create an alternative path forward. Whether this involves partnership with figures like Tucker Carlson or financial backing from Elon Musk, who reportedly discussed supporting such efforts, remains uncertain, but the intention is clear. Greene sees an opening for a post-Trump conservative movement. Why does any of this matter for those concerned about democratic institutions? Every fracture in MAGA creates space for democracy to breathe. Trump's authoritarian tendencies and willingness to undermine democratic norms have been well documented. When prominent figures within his movement begin to publicly break away, it weakens his ability to consolidate power and creates opportunities for more traditional conservative voices to reemerge. Trump's defensive response to the article, insisting on his continued relevance when it wasn't being disputed, reveals an awareness that MAGA's cohesion is fragmenting. As Greene continues speaking publicly during her transition out of office, we'll likely see more revelations about the internal dynamics of a movement that appears to be eating itself from within.
Trump posted yesterday that you are, quote, and I'm quoting him now, not America first or MAGA, and your, quote, new views are those of a very dumb person. That's the president of the United States speaking about you. What's your response to these latest attacks?
Well, actually, Wolf, I feel very sorry for President Trump. I genuinely do. It has to be a hard place for someone that is constantly so hateful and puts so much vitriol, name calling, and really tells lies about people in order to try to get his way or win some kind of fight. And I think that's exactly what's wrong in America today. That's what's wrong in this toxic political environment that has ripped our country apart. And I personally think that that's poor leadership from a president. It's a very bad demeanor, and Americans are very tired of it.
If this analysis gave you a clearer picture of what's actually happening in American politics, show some love with a heart in the comments. And if you're not already subscribed to the Mac Media, now's the time. We're pushing toward 50,000 subscribers who refuse to accept talking points as truth. Join us